Chapter 6 of Ball Gowns, Blunders, and Blades. The invitation to Maplewood Manor's hastily arranged winter ball were handwritten on creamy vellum, sealed with Edwina's crest, and delivered by Potts with the efficiency of a scandal courier. "Ah," said Horatio, inspecting his invitation. "We haven't hosted one since the great pudding collapse of 1803. "We have more pressing concerns than trifle trauma," Edwina replied. "We're baiting a murderer, and possibly a royal spy." Tabitha swept in with 3 gowns on her arm. "I've borrowed lace from the Reverend's wife, and feathers from the mayor's peacock. No one will recognize me." Louis, meanwhile, had taken over training the Duke of Thunder to behave regally in case the evening required an equine flourish. Preparations unfolded at breakneck speed. The children decorated the ballroom with absurd enthusiasm, placing every candle slightly askew and sneaking sugared plums when no one watched. Amos, the stable boy, was drafted as assistant cloakroom manager and occasional lookout. By evening, Maplewood Manor glittered like a rumor in full bloom. Guests arrived in carriages drawn by horses that gleamed under gaslight. Lords and ladies, baronets and barmaids mingled uneasily beneath crystal chandeliers. Somewhere, a string quartet tried valiantly to play a gavotte, while avoiding the drunken footman who insisted he knew the violin part. Lady Plunkett arrived in a cloud of orange blossom and malice. Lord Hawthorne in silk and suspicion. Even the vicar made an appearance, mumbling about shepherding the sinful with one hand firmly on the port decanter. "Everyone's here," Tabitha whispered to Edwina, "which means so is the killer." Louis adjusted his cufflinks. "We must watch for panic. Guilt shows itself when threatened." At the center of the ballroom, under the great chandelier, stood a display. The Duke of Thunder, saddled as he had been the day the corpse arrived, and beside him, a glass case displaying the false documents. "We announce them at midnight," Edwina said. "Let them squirm until then." As dancing commenced, alliances shifted like sand. Lady Plunkett exchanged barbed pleasantries with Lord Hawthorne. The mayor's wife fainted from scandal-induced vapors. Someone spiked the punch with elderberry wine, and Tobias performed a jig that defied rhythm, reason, and gravity. Louis danced once with Edwina, once with Tabitha, and once with a mysterious woman in a black veil who vanished after saying, "Not all titles are earned." "Did anyone else see her?"
"What veil?" Horatio blinked. "You've had too much elderberry."
At 5 minutes to midnight, the chandelier flickered. A scream rang out. In the cloakroom, Amos stood over a toppled coat rack, eyes wide. "Someone tried to take the documents." Tabitha rushed to the display. The glass had been tampered with, but the parchments were still there. "That was a warning," Edwina said. "They won't wait much longer." Colonel Blight emerged with his saber drawn.
"I've cornered a suspect in the conservatory. Claims to be a cousin of Bellamy."
They followed him and found a young man with strikingly similar features to the late Bellamy, albeit with more perspiration and less fork.
"My name is Sebastian Bellamy,"
he said in heavily accented English.
"Claude was my brother."
"And why are you here now?"
"He sent word weeks ago. Said he had proof that titles in England and Canada were being sold, manipulated by gamblers and politicians. He wanted to expose them."
Louis looked at him with sudden recognition.
"You were at Ascot 2 summers ago." The Spanish trainer. I was. Claude said Maplewood was where the trail ended.
Tabitha stepped forward. You said trail ended. Past tense. Sebastian met her gaze.
Because now they will kill again.
Midnight struck. The ballroom went silent, and the chandelier swayed. Edwina took the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we celebrate tradition, elegance, and clarity. In that spirit, I reveal these documents. The glass case shattered. The lights went out, and someone screamed again. The mystery was no longer content to ride in on horseback. It was dancing among them now. Chapter 7: Unmaskings and Unravelings. The lights flickered back on in Maplewood Manor's ballroom. Guests blinked in confusion. A few screamed again for good measure, and one baronet fainted into the punch bowl with a splash. On the marble floor near the shattered glass case lay Mrs. Lively, a socialite with a fondness for secrets and sequins. She clutched her side, blood staining her gloves. I'm fine, she gasped. Someone pushed me as I reached for the case. They wore gloves, smelled of furniture polish. Edwina, flanked by Tabitha and Horatio, ushered everyone back. No one leaves, not until we sort this. Constable Nibs, who had been enjoying a particularly plump profiterole, stumbled forward and produced a notebook.
I will begin a list.
Sebastian examined the broken case.
The documents are still here, but this was meant as distraction.
Lewis nodded grimly.
They knew we would announce something tonight. They feared exposure.
Wellington the cat, unfazed by the commotion, leaped onto the dais and sat on the documents.
Well, that's settled then,
muttered Horatio. Tabitha pointed toward the conservatory. If the attacker fled, there may be evidence outside. They hurried into the moonlit conservatory. Among shattered pots and upturned ferns, they found a glove, leather, lined in gold brocade. Tabitha sniffed it. Furniture polish and lavender. Lady Plunkett wears lavender, Edwina said. Back in the ballroom, Plunkett was already half defending herself. Lavender is common. Half the village smells like sachets. I was dancing with the vicar.
Which one?
asked Tobias. The drunk one, she replied. Meanwhile, Sebastian found a torn scrap of paper tucked into his coat pocket, slipped there during the blackout. It read, You are next.
They must know who I am, he whispered.
Then we must make them think they've won, Edwina declared. We leak a fake version of the documents. See who reacts. And watch them come out of hiding to destroy the real ones, Tabitha added.
I'll prepare a forgery,
Sebastian offered.
My brother taught me well.
Lewis looked at him, then at Edwina.
These will flush them out, but we need bait.
Horatio grunted.
You mean someone they want to silence?
Everyone turned to Edwina. Oh, splendid, she said dryly. I do love being popular.
We announce tomorrow that you'll present the documents to the Crown, Lewis suggested, publicly, at the train station.
And we watch who tries to stop it, Tabitha concluded. Wellington mewed in approval. The next morning, the village buzzed with news of the documents and Edwina's impending presentation. Children drew pictures of thunder in tiny hats. Rumors flew faster than pigeons at a fair. As Edwina prepared her speech, Lewis stood beside her, eyes scanning every shadow.
"They will come," he said, "but so will justice."
Edwina smiled. Then let us dress accordingly, for court or combat. And the final trap was laid. Chapter 8. A Station, a Standoff, and a Scandal Revealed. The Maplewood train station had never seen such bustle. Normally home to sleepy postal deliveries and chickens wandering off the platform, it now bristled with curiosity seekers, whispering gentry, and at least 2 reporters scribbling furiously in shorthand. At the center of it all stood Edwina Featherstone, dressed in imperial blue and radiating the sort of poise typically reserved for queens or courtroom dramas. Beside her stood Tabitha, fanning herself with a list of suspects. Louis Calderon's eyes sweeping the crowd. Colonel Blight, gloved and saber-hilt ready. And Sebastian Bellamy, clutching the forgery documents like they might explode. "Where are the children?" Edwina asked.
"With the governess," Horatio replied. "She threatened them with Latin. They're silent now."
Wellington the cat had evaded all authority and perched upon a luggage scale, looking unamused. A brass band played an ill-advised march. The clock struck noon. Edwina stepped forward. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. Today we present evidence regarding recent forgeries, conspiracies, and acts of deadly deception." A shot rang out. Chaos erupted. Lewis tackled Edwina to the ground. Horatio threw a tray at the brass band. Tabitha dove behind a sandwich cart. The bullet had missed, but only barely, embedded in the lectern. From the far side of the platform, a cloaked figure ran. Sebastian shouted, "That's him!" Amos, the stable boy, popped up from behind a stack of crates.
"He went that way!"
Lewis sprinted, vaulting crates with unexpected flair. The crowd parted. Edwina, brushing dust off her skirts, calmly adjusted her brooch. Minutes later, Lewis returned, dragging a limping man whose coat bore traces of lavender polish. "The furniture-smelling victim," Tabitha whispered. "I knew it." "The furniture-smelling villain." The man struggled.
"I was paid to silence him. Bellamy knew too much. He was going to name them. Hawthorne, Plunkett, and even a duke from the Ascot Circle. He said they forged bloodlines and gambled on heirs like horses."
The crowd gasped. The mayor choked on a biscuit. Sebastian stepped forward.
"My brother was going to blow it all open. He hid the real documents for protection."
Edwina nodded. "And now we retrieve them." Lewis held up a slip of paper found in the man's pocket. A map.
"Eating between the old race stables," he said. "A jest."
Constable Nibs declared,
"I shall confiscate it honorably."
The crowd applauded as if it were theater. A child handed Wellington a rosette. Later that evening, back at Maplewood Manor, the true documents were laid out. They named names, showed proof of lineage manipulation, bribed officiants, and falsified titles. "Some of these go back decades," Tabitha said, awed. "And some are very current," Edwina murmured, "including Plunkett and Hawthorne."
"What happens next?"
Sebastian asked. "Now," Edwina said, "we decide who deserves to keep their seat at the table." Lewis added,
"And who deserves a cell?"
Colonel Blight raised a glass.
"To justice served, and scandal perfectly brewed.
The room clinked glasses. Even Wellington meowed. The mystery was no longer riding. It was galloping toward its final reckoning. Chapter 9. The Confession and the Crown. 2 days after the train station debacle, Maplewood Manor received a visitor of the kind that sent the village into either hysterics or hiding: a royal emissary. He arrived in a carriage so polished it reflected the scandal still clinging to the hedgerows, escorted by guards who looked suspiciously like actors from a touring Shakespeare troupe.
Madam Featherstone,
The emissary inquired, bowing deeply.
Her Majesty has taken great interest in recent equine developments.
She does enjoy horses and justice, Edwina replied with matching solemnity. They convened in the library. Sebastian, Louis, Tabitha, and Horatio joined her, with Wellington perched atop a bust of Socrates. The emissary placed a velvet pouch on the table. Inside, a ring bearing the royal crest.
This grants you full authority to proceed, he said. Her Majesty believes light disinfects.
And gossip travels faster, Tabitha added. Edwina rose. Then we move forward. The next morning, in the village hall, Edwina stood before an assembly of nobles, villagers, and more reporters than chairs. We have discovered evidence of forged titles, manipulated bloodlines, and dangerous conspiracies stretching from Ascot to our very own Maplewood. Gasps. The vicar spilled communion wine. These documents, she held up the originals, will be handed to the Crown. Those implicated will face inquiry. Lady Plunkett fainted. Again. Lord Hawthorne simply adjusted his monocle and muttered,
Well played.
Sebastian stepped forward.
My brother died to reveal the truth. I only hope his name will be remembered more nobly than it was used.
It will, Edwina promised. This village stood at a crossroads. It chose integrity. Outside, children sang a tuneless but enthusiastic anthem they had composed entirely about Thunder the horse. Later, the emissary handed over an envelope. Inside, an invitation.
Her Majesty requests your presence at Ascot. There will be a tribute race and a reward.
Louis arched a brow.
Will there be cake?
Several, the emissary confirmed. Edwina smiled. Then Maplewood rides again. And thus, the troop galloped not just to the crown, but into history. Chapter 10. Of Train, Tickets, Tension, and Tea Leaks. Preparations for the upcoming journey to Ascot were underway, but peace was not so easily packed away with the traveling cloaks. Maplewood may have survived the scandal, but it had not yet understood it.
What precisely is one meant to wear to meet royalty over horse-based fraud?
Horatio mused, examining a hat with 2 feathers too many. Something with both dignity and a hidden pocket, Edwina replied, scanning a letter that had just arrived. Tabitha burst into the parlor with ink on her chin. Someone leaked the wrong version of the documents to the Tavistock Times. They're claiming Thunder was secretly owned by an exiled princess. Louis looked up from polishing his boots.
That's not even the correct conspiracy.
It's colorful, Sebastian added. And dangerously misleading, Edwina said. This suggests someone still wants the truth buried beneath fantasy. Outside, Tobias and Ruby chased Wellington with a tiny crown they intended to glue to his head. Potts entered with a telegram.
Urgent, ma'am. From a Mr. Rigsby in York. Says he has information about the real heir to the Ascot estate, and a fondness for peppermint creams.
Edwina read it, then stood. We must detour to York. The story isn't finished. Tabitha blinked. You're saying there's another heir?
Or someone pretending to be one, Lewis said. Either way, it could destabilize everything we've just repaired.
And we simply cannot allow peppermint to become the flavor of treachery, Edwina concluded. Within the hour, bags were repacked, horses readied, and tickets booked on the next northbound train. As the station faded behind them, Edwina turned to the others. If this is a footnote, we'll find the period. If it's a new chapter, we'll write it.
Hopefully with fewer bullets this time,
Horatio muttered. Tabitha held up her notebook. Always be prepared. I brought 3 pens and a tin of sardines. Sebastian smiled.
Then we are ready.
Maplewood was not done with mystery. It had simply taken an intermission for tea.